Republican governors are now doing human trafficking to own the libs. Plane loads of migrants arrived in the wealthy liberal enclave of Martha's Vineyard this week. They were flown there by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Texas Governor Greg Abbott also dispatched 2 busloads of migrants to Vice President Kamala Harris's residence here in Washington, D.C. But since the vice president lives in the Naval Observatory, which is a highly secure military facility, migrants were just dumped outside the security gate on the side of the road. Here's a report from a local CBS affiliate here in D.C., WUSA 9.
It was 6 a.m. when buses pulled into an address unknown to these migrants.
She's very scared about all things that are happening.
Advocates say about 100 people, natives of Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua, fleeing violence in their homeland, boarded the buses in Texas with the promise that folks in D.C. were going to help them get to their final destination. Turns out the only people who were waiting for them to answer questions, offer food and rides to hotels were advocates. D.C. leaders tell us they were never informed.
In fact, for months now, right-wing governors in southern states have been putting desperate migrants, including children who came to the U.S. seeking asylum, on buses and then sending them to liberal cities like Washington, New York, and Chicago. Abbott has already done this to about 10,000 people. Governors using actual human beings as pawns to send a political message. And according to some of the individuals who wound up in Martha's Vineyard, they were lied to in order to get them on a plane. NPR interviewed 3 migrants who said that a woman named Perla approached them outside a shelter in San Antonio. She promised them that if they boarded the plane, they would be flown to Boston where they would receive expedited work papers. They said Perla was going around trying to recruit several people to get on the plane. Others said they were promised housing and a job when they arrived. But of course, that was all a lie. There were no expedited work papers waiting for them. There wasn't any job or food or shelter, and they weren't even flown to Boston. They're flown to Martha's Vineyard. Local officials were not prepared for their arrival. They weren't notified. Since many of the migrants don't speak English, local high school students taking Spanish classes were called in to help serve as interpreters to figure out what the hell was going on. The community eventually came together to provide shelter, food, clothing, and other necessities to the group. Questions are now being raised about the legality of what governors like DeSantis and Abbott are doing. Since immigration enforcement is a federal responsibility, state officials taking steps to transport undocumented immigrants across state lines could violate smuggling laws, but that's unlikely. However, since there is good evidence that individuals were lied to and coerced to get on planes, then it could be a case of human trafficking or even kidnapping. Governor J.B. Pritzker said state and local officials are looking into any criminal liability here. And California Governor Gavin Newsom called on the Department of Justice to investigate what's happening. Well, what's happening, aside from the criminality of it all, is Ron DeSantis is gearing up for a presidential run, and his pitch appears to be, hey, you know Donald Trump? I'm just like him, only somehow more cruel and with none of the charisma. Hey, thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of our new videos. Also, if you want to see Means Morning News in its complete form, not just the clips we post here, head on over to Means TV and get access to all our new episodes and our entire backlog, plus tons of other great movies and original TV shows.